Hello and welcome to another edition of Rep TV. We're so pleased to be with you today. As always, you have here Steve Cody, who's the rep man himself, all the way to the left, and then of course, or to the right, your screen, and you have myself, Paul Mershon, your co-host as well. And we are pleased to have with us Dr. Baseball, once again, Wayne McDonald, Clinical Associate Professor of Sports Management at NYU. Thanks so much for being with us again, Wayne.
Thank you for having me again.
How are you liking the season so far?
It's been great. Yankees are playing somewhat well compared to the expectations. Some exciting races happening so far, and I think you're going to be in for a really good second half after the All-Star break here.
So glad to hear that. I'm sure Steve, as a Met fan, is really glad to hear that as well.
I was about to give him the back of my hand.
Oh, okay. Is that how the Mets have been playing, backhanded lately?
They've been playing any-handed, but the right way to play. So we'll get to the dysfunction that is or the New York Mets. But I know you wanted to kick off with a completely different subject.
Absolutely. And Wayne, actually, we've talked about this subject in other visits that you've had here before, the issue of diversity in baseball, and we've seen a few articles actually crop up on this season. We wanted to touch on more of the aspect of the diversity within the front office and how that's been lacking. I know that that's been a major issue. Right now, there are only 4, as I understand it, high-ranking minority executives in Major League Baseball. What is the solution to this? If MLB has not been able to address the issue with diversity on the playing field, how can they even begin to address the issue of diversity in the front office?
Well, I can tell you for a fact that they have, Major League Baseball has assembled really an all-star team within their executive offices to combat this issue and dilemma, because there are many immensely talented and gifted minorities and women right now working within baseball, but probably aren't getting the opportunities that they should be, whether it be general managers, assistant general managers, team presidents, and executives. And I can tell you the men and women working at 245 Park Avenue on this issue are really some of the brightest minds in it. And they get it. They realize that this is a major problem across the sport. Most importantly, there are people in the game who deserve these opportunities. And the example I always use, and I know it's not a good example, but when Willie Randolph was interviewing for a lot of managerial jobs, he just became like the check off the box guy, and that was very frustrating, because if you followed his career, he's a high baseball IQ guy, really passionate, and he hasn't gotten another chance since the Mets, and that's
incredible.
And that's disappointing.
As a Met fan, I wouldn't give him another chance. I mean, the worst collapse in baseball history under Willie is he just...
Still won't let that go, huh?
Nah. When you're a Met fan, you just don't let go of things like that. But sorry, you continue.
No, but I think that's just one example of it. I'm also a firm believer that there are quite a few women in baseball right now that should be general managers of teams. For instance, Jean Afterman of the Yankees and Kim Ng, who works in Major League Baseball's front offices. And I think these are immensely talented and gifted people who should be given the appropriate shots. So baseball realizes that the problem, and they're combating it, but probably not to the way we want to see the results right now.
Yeah, why isn't a quick solution to, I mean, you mentioned something like Willie Randolph, and that's one of the first names that popped in my head. I mean, you got guys like Reggie Jackson who have been sort of around front offices for a while, big stars like that. How come they haven't tapped into some of those former stars?
Well, it's kind of funny. If you're looking at the constitution of front offices in baseball today, it's this analytics-driven, Ivy League educated, quad backgrounds, and they get very narrowly focused on that's all they're looking for. It's almost put into a box rather than thinking outside the box and how we can reach more people, because right now the front offices in baseball and the managers in the game are not properly representing the population within the game. When you have over 1/3 of your population of ball players come from all corners of the world, and it's not really resonating in the front offices, it's not even resonating in the managers' offices, with the exception of the Dusty Bakers and the Dave Roberts and the Rick Renterias with the White Sox. And that is a big problem.
So does baseball need an updated version of Branch Rickey in terms of the commissioner himself to just say enough is enough, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it the next 18 months, and just, I don't know if you can mandate it, but just make it his personal mission?
Well, Commissioner Emeritus Sealy tried to do that with the Sealy rule, where you had to interview at least one minority candidate. And I know Commissioner Manfred is deeply committed to this cause, but it's something that's not going to happen overnight. But I will say, and I can say with great certainty, that Commissioner Manfred has assembled a team within Major League Baseball that's addressing this, and it's really laying a nice groundwork and foundation that in the coming years we're going to see that pipeline. So I think what you have to do, and this is my opinion, you have to build a feeder system for highly talented executives, just like you would to build a minor league roster to a major league roster. Right. So I think baseball is in the incubus stages of doing that, and I think in the next 3 to 5 years it's going to see the fruits of their labor.
So you mentioned the quant-driven front office, and there's been this paradigm shift kind of within Major League Baseball on that. There was an article that you wrote recently, and you have a Forbes column that we were reading, and within that article you talked about Major League Baseball using digital a bit more to attract younger audiences, and you mentioned StatCast, which, as many people know, it's used to measure things like the velocity of a home run, exit velocity, and other things like that. Do you think that that's really one of the solutions they could use in order to attract this younger audience, because they're still struggling with getting millennials to watch the game?
Well, I think that's a great point, because what I see on a daily basis, covering the game, consuming the game, and being an academic chair of a major sports management program here in New York, is the fact that young men and women in that 18 to 30-year-old window are not consuming baseball the way we would probably do. Yep. Sit down and watch, and we'd be deeply committed. These young men and women want it on their iPads, they want it on their tablets, and here's the other key thing: they don't have cable television.
Right.
They're cord cutters, and their way of consuming is vastly different. And I think professional sports as a whole is still trying to reach this audience in a deep and meaningful way. And putting the exit velocities and the miles per hour on the home runs and everything is attractive because you can use the technology, but they have to do far more than just that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I don't have cable or satellite, and so usually I pick up stuff on the MLB Apple TV app, and it's usually just highlights, right? Unless I pay the exorbitant price for the package.
$25 a month just to get that coverage.
Just to get the coverage, right? And so is there any way that that's going to change in the near future, the model and how they're bringing this product over to the audiences?
I think so. I'm a huge believer that these television deals that we're seeing, these $12 to $20 billion TV deals in Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA are going to burst, because the network's going to realize this is a loss leader for them, and the league's going to say, we can't sustain this business model by getting this money because it's not going to be there. We have to think of new and innovative ways to reach our audience. And I would say between 2020 and 2030, we're going to see seismic shifts in terms of how we are consuming sports through digital media.
Paul's going to be sent down at AAA that continues to dominate this particular Rep TV. I wanted to bring up a sore point. So my alma mater, Northeastern University, happened to beat other schools, one of which was NYU, in terms of a strategic partnership with Major League Baseball. And as I understand it, it's really aimed at helping those individuals who maybe didn't get their college degrees and went fast track hoping they would make it to Major League Baseball, and then didn't make it, but now Northeastern is there with this partnership to help them make up for what they lost. Could you just comment on that program?
Sure, absolutely. NYU.
And why did you lose it?
Well,
No.
I would say the best way to approach it is, when you look at Major League Baseball and how players are drafted and the different rules, a lot of these young men are coming out of high school, and some of them are even coming from foreign countries where English is not even spoken, and they're missing the requisite skills just to have a level of success in life. And I think that was a big issue, that Major League Baseball and the Players Association was deeply committed to finding ways to educate these young men and give them an opportunity beyond the ball field. I would say we did put something together. We did work on a proposal. We did have conversations with the Players Association. Much to my disappointment, we could not proceed any further, but I firmly believe in it. I think it should be across the board in all of sports.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that it has to be in the NBA, and if they do away with the one and done rule and force an associate's degree at a minimum, it's going to change the playing field, and it's going to be so meaningful for these young men to actually have the key skills to be a success in life, because sports are the only profession that you depreciate with age rather than appreciate.
Interesting. Paul's depreciating the last
A little
couple
bit,
of years.
yeah.
So we're going to do 2 parts with Dr. Baseball, and we're going to wrap up part 1. So
we'll check you guys out in part 2.
right. So this is the 7th inning stretch.
Yes.
Stay tuned for part 2.